Live Guide feature on the E-PL1 is really easy. Right out of the box, the camera is set to Eye Auto. That's where you're going to find Live Guide. Let's check it out. You start by pressing the OK button on the back of the camera, right in the center of those navigation keys. That'll bring up the new Live Guide menu. It's really colorful. There's a lot of little icons on the right and just plain language up on top. Change color image, even things like change brightness. Common terminology that we've seen, well, when we use the remote control on our television. Just use the navigation keys to scroll through the Live Guide menus. And the navigation keys, by the way, they're all around the OK button on the back of the camera. You can move up and down the Live Guide menu and eventually get to one of the options that you think you'd like to adjust. And once you're there, all you have to do is press the OK button to enter a Live Guide menu option, and that's going to bring up a slider. And that's all there is to it. You can move the slider up and down using the navigation keys. And in this case, again, terminology like warm and cool when you're talking about changing color. Very, very easy to understand, very easy to adjust. There's really only two things you have to know. One is the cancel menu, and the other one is the OK button in the center of the navigation keys. If I press that, I'm back inside. If I don't want to be in that menu option anymore, I press the menu button on the back of the body. Two buttons, OK and menu, to get in and out of Live Guide. Let's take a look now and see what Live Guide does on real subjects. Here we've got Mr. and Mrs. Hula. We're going to use them as our subject matter. We're going to focus on Mrs. Hula, and you'll notice some square boxes. That's part of your face detection technology at work. Let's press OK and take a look at some of the options now. How about change color image? Let's try that one. We're going to press OK to enter, and there's our slider again. And we've got the option of adjusting the slider. We can move it down to cool, and you'll notice the colors on our subjects tend to get very cool. All the blues are emphasized. Or we can move it up towards warm. Simple as that. Let's get it set exactly where we want it to get the color just the way we like. And then we're going to go ahead and take a shot. Press OK, and now press the shutter button, and the camera's going to refocus. Go ahead, press it all the way down to take the shot, and now we've got our first shot of Mr. and Mrs. Hula using one of our Live Guide adjustments. But let's do a comparison here. We're going to press the menu button again to back out of that Live Guide option, and now let's just take a regular shot without any adjustments. There it is, and guess what? Here's our two shots. One using Live Guide, the one on your left that says warm, and the other one, really just a straight shot. Let's check out another Live Guide menu option. Let's go up to color saturation. This is a pretty common adjustment. You've probably adjusted this on your television. Here's our options. We can go down to flat and muted. That kind of subtracts color out of our subjects. Or we can use the arrow keypad again and go up to the clear and vivid side, and that actually adds color to our subject. Let's take a shot, capture it, clear and vivid, and now let's take another shot, but this time let's go back into our Live Guide menu by pressing the OK button and go down to the flat and muted side of the spectrum, and we'll do a good side-by-side comparison of both of these features. Focus, take the shot, and here we go. The left-hand side, definitely much more color than the right. But what's nice about it is you actually saw the difference before you took the shot. Back out, press the menu button. Now we're back to viewing our live subjects again, but let's take a look at another Live Guide menu option. Brightness, that's a really, really common one. You can either make the subject bright or you can make the subject dark. Leave it up to your discretion. Again, just as simple as adjusting the arrow key up or the arrow key down on your navigation keypad. In this option, you can see the entire subject either gets lighter or darker based on how you adjust that little slider. But here's a little secret for you. See that little tiny yellow arrow right there in the center? That corresponds to the arrow keypad. Press that left arrow key and you're going to actually expand the brightness menu. And this is really pretty cool because if you notice now, you've got the option to brighten the bright areas or darken the dark areas, or brighten just the dark areas or darken just the dark areas. So not only can we actually lighten and darken the entire scene, When we expand the brightening option within Live Guide, we can go in and selectively lighten or darken either the shadows or the highlights of our subject. This is really pretty amazing, and we can see the effects live right on the LCD before we take the shot. Let's go ahead and give it a whirl and see what happens. We're going to make our best adjustment, and then we're going to go ahead and capture this image. Press OK, press the shutter release to focus, snap the shutter. Now check this out. On the left-hand side is our bright version where we've lightened the dark areas, and on the right-hand side we've darkened the dark areas, but we didn't lose any detail in the shadows. Pretty amazing, really. Let's see what else we've got in the Live Guide menu. Another option right below brightness is the blur background. This option is actually controlling the aperture or the depth of field of the subject live right before your eyes. Here we are focused on Mrs. Hula. Now watch what's going to happen here. Watch Mr. Hula in the background. We're going to go ahead and take this first shot. There's our first shot. There's Mr. Hula in the background. Keep your eye on him. Then we're going to go back into the Live Guide menu by pressing the OK button, and let's adjust up to the blur position. We're going to take this shot now. We're going to go back in to the Live Guide menu, and instead of the blurred position, we're going to go down to the sharp position. How easy is that? Blur and sharp. We're going to go down to sharp. You can see Mr. Hula starts to look like he has a little bit more detail in his face. And as a matter of fact, if we press the shutter release halfway, the camera is actually looking at both Mr. Hula and Mrs. Hula to determine the distance between them. Take the shot, and let's see what happens. Check it out. The image on the left shows a lot more detail in Mr. Hula's face than the one on the right. Blur and sharp. So easy. Let's take a look at another one. This one's really fun. Express motion. Pretty much means exactly what it sounds like. You can either show motion or stop motion based on how you adjust the little slider. Let's get started. What we're going to do is we're going to actually have Mrs. Hula dance around a little bit for us, and you can see even when she's moving, the face detection technology keeps up with her so that it can make sure to stay focused. Look at this. When I put the slider up to the blurred position, look, she looks like a ghost image. Mr. Hula looks so sharp. And then down to stop motion, even though I'm moving her still, now she's no longer blurry, and I'm seeing this live right on the LCD before I take the shot. I can actually see the effects of motion. Let's take a shot and see what happens. Check this out. Mrs. Hula is totally a blur. Mr. Hula looks great. But let's see what happens if we take a shot at the opposite end of our little slider, down there where it says stop motion. Mrs. Hula's still on the move. We've got our slider in position. We're focused. We're going to take the shot. Check this out. Two shots, one that shows blurred motion and one that shows stop motion, and we saw it live before we took the shot. Amazing. Let's go back into our Live Guide menu and back out. Remember, 2 buttons, that's all you need to know. Menu or OK to get in and out. So now we're going to go back into the main Live Guide menu, and we've got one other option down here at the bottom. That little exclamation mark, let's check that out and see what that's all about. These are tips. These are tips, shooting tips, to help you get better pictures in a variety of probably some of the most common shooting situations, like pictures of pets and flowers, and even taking pictures of food. You wouldn't think about it, but most people do take pictures of a nicely set table if you're out at a restaurant. This is going to give you a lot of really great tips. This last one, tips for framing, is really useful. And if you notice, there's that little tiny triangle that corresponds with the arrow key on your arrow keypad. Press that, and that expanded our tips. We have 1 of 3 pages, and you'll notice a little arrow right down at the bottom. That means we can press that arrow key on our keypad and scroll through the pages. Here we're on the 2nd page out of 3, and then scroll down to the 3rd. And as a matter of fact, if we start scrolling up with that top arrow key, we can actually go through all of the pages for all of the topics and see what kind of tips the Olympus E-PL1 is offering us so that we get better pictures in a variety of different shooting situations, some of the most common shooting situations you probably run across. And remember, when you're done looking around in any of the menus, to get back out, you want to press the menu button on the back of the camera, and that'll take you all the way back out so that you're viewing your subjects again live on the LCD. The E-PL1 from Olympus has the full complement of manual controls, but iAuto with Live Guide, well, that just puts the fun back in shooting again. Live Guide, powerfully simple, from Olympus. Check it out.